Click on the subscribe button, especially the bell on the right side. Otherwise, you will miss the latest videos.
So, the H1b visa. So, what are the conditions and rights of a H1b visa? One has to understand, because see, in the days bygone, when these texts were written or recited and stored in memory, as you know, that was the ancient system. There were no visas required. See, you at the most had a passport from your king, which was a certificate or a letter to the other king that allow my person to come and be travel in your kingdom and whatever. And if he wants to work, he can also work there if that king finds him suitable. And that is it. So how do we look at it in astrology? So first thing is, what is H1b visa? What are the conditions? So Neeraj, if you can take the next slide. I think I already given that. I mean, most of you will be knowing it. H1b visa program is connected with US, is known to everybody. It applies to employers who want to hire non-immigrant aliens, as they call them, as workers in special occupations. This special occupation also means being a model, being a sports person, and X and Y, and or distinguished merit or ability. So this has to reflect somewhere, one thing that is necessary. And it would need some knowledge, specialized knowledge, at least at the time of attainment of a bachelor's degree or its equivalent. That is necessary. That is one of the conditions of getting H1B visa. And what it grants you is a right to apply for green card and then hopefully for the citizenship. So this is what is H1B visa. And if all these things are present in some way or other in the chart, if there is a promise in the chart, then only it can be delivered, is how I look at it. If there is no promise in the chart, then it could happen for some time and then go away. So the next slide will explain that. I mean, I am again reiterating what it is. H1B, it is a certificate which allows Jatak to stay and work abroad. It automatically recognizes his special abilities or skills. It is also true that the Jatak will be satisfied with his earning, because had he earned much or got recognition much in his own motherland, why would he go abroad? Is a very simple logic which one has to use. So all these conditions have to be somewhere there. And there should be a possibility of relocation or working or settling abroad in the chart. If all these things are there, then in certain conditions, the person might get the H1B visa, which leads ultimately to citizenship if that person so desires. So there are instances where people go abroad, work there for some years, and then come back also. So we are only talking about H1B visa at the moment. So the next slide, if I may say so. If I am going fast, tell me, because Mars aspects my second house, so sometimes I go at a breakneck speed, and please make me aware of that. So what is necessary in the natal chart? We'll look at that. It must indicate some career or income growth when that Jataka goes abroad. That has to be first condition, because without growth or without income, nobody goes abroad. I mean, one may say that people go abroad for so-called the NGO activities, but even there, that their meetings are held in 5-star and 7-star hotels, and they travel by air. So please don't confuse all those things. And it is anyway not anything to do with the H1b part of it. Then there has to be appreciation or education and possibility of working abroad. In all these cases, because some visas, I mean, most of the time, H1B is also tied up with the PG degree automatically, not H1B, but at least work permit is there, which later on can get transferred into H1B. Then in motherland, what should happen to make a person try this is loss of income, loss of fortune, loss of valor. I mean, he may be courageous, but no results come in, unhappiness. All those things have to be shown in the chart, which will make him think of at least going out of the motherland, or make him satisfied when he is out. Then there has to be obviously the indications to flourish in distant lands. Income from or losses from on account of people of different culture, etc. Or addictions, I mean, the addictions will give losses, isn't it? Or some people might deceive him and he suffer losses where in the motherland, and the reverse exactly happens abroad. So that has to be shown somewhere or other in the chart. And a person has to be comfortable in foreign countries or different culture. I always say, whenever I say foreign countries, I also include distinctly different culture, because for a country like India, which is a huge, almost subcontinent, the definition of foreign country can change in a way. Of course, something else I'll talk sometimes otherwise. But because see, people from north going to south might think that they have come in a foreign country. So I also include distinctly different cultures there, but that is only about going abroad. We are talking here about the H1B visa, that is permission to work abroad. Specifically in USA, it could also be in different countries, because different countries have different rules, which I mean, some countries have the PR and then citizenship. This would more or less apply to those countries also, though we are basically talking about the H1B visa. So that person has to be comfortable there. If somebody is uncomfortable, how long is he going to stay? Is the basic question. And the specialty knowledge or skills which are not recognized in his own motherland. Which, I mean, he may have some skills, but or he feels that there is no recognition that is coming his way when he is working in his motherland. So the next slide would perhaps tell more about it. And see, so what happens? We have to see that either the Lord of the Lagna, Lord of the 11th, Lord of the 10th, Lord of the 9th, Lord of the 5th, I'll explain everything. Lord of the 4th, Lord of the 2nd, and Lord of the 3rd should be either in 12th bhava, or 12th bhava Lord should be placed in these bhavas. Because 12th bhava is loss, expenditure. So what is lost? A person's body is lost, so body has to go abroad. So 12th Lagna Lord could be placed in the 12th house, where that is a possibility, or that person might have health issues. As I always say, this is a science of probability of a very higher level. So never forget that. And the choice is always, as I was started with the Karma Siddhir Vyavasthita, the choice is with the Jataka. Most of the time it might show something negative in the chart of the Jataka, but that is subject to his remaining in his own country. So please understand this. Otherwise, many a times we confuse because of this. And 12th Lord going there will be some loss. In 11th, it will indicate loss again. Income is lost. So he may be earning anything, but will feel that he is not getting enough money. 9th is, of course, fortune. You can understand fifth is the higher education, which is the PG level in these times. Later on, it might become doctorate. This changes with the time. See, time's relativity is what actually this is a science of study of time. Though it is not specifically said, but in certain cases, in certain texts, they have said this, that this is study of time. So we call it Desha, Kala, and Patra. The individual, the country, and the times in which we are assessing a chart. So this is how we have to understand. Now, does a person needs to necessarily go out? Sometimes it might be the best thing that can happen to him. And sometimes even Rahu, Ketu afflictions can indicate that. But just to make it clear that this is not flight of my imagination, there are always texts which have said this, because in earlier days, everything had to be memorized. And so the brevity of Sanskrit language was there. And it is not necessary every text will deal with every possibility or every probability that can happen. And that is why I am giving some shlokas just to make you be certain that I'm not talking out of my head, because that might appear to be like that for some people. So there is a shloka which says, Shaneshchara karma gruhastitaipi mahadhani nritya jananurakta prapta pravase nupasadnavasi nashatru bhayam ayati mani. So what means when Saturn is placed in the 10th house, what is the connection 18? When Saturn is placed in the state, 10th house, the person is very wealthy, but he is fond of dances, etc. So what is that connection? I try to tell. Prapta pravase. Now pravase is not travel. In Sanskrit, if you find out, it is going abroad. So prapta pravase, rupasadnavas. I mean, if he goes out, what happens? He can, if he goes abroad, then he will live in a big house. He will not have any fear from enemies, and he will be very proud of his, obviously, achievements. Remember, this is Sanskrit. Brevity is the essence of this language. So first part talks about, though he has much money, perhaps inherited, he will be spending it in things related to Saturn. Dances means, in once upon a time, it was, people with not so very good habits were supposed to go to dances and waste their money. And that is what is talking about. Because what happens in 10th house? Saturn aspect the 12th house. So he can show the way he can spend his money, and whatever is indicated by Saturn, you are aware. It can be stock market, it can be drinking, it can be smoking, and other things, and many other things, including the Nritya Jananuraktaha. But if she gets to go abroad, Prapta Pravas, then what happens? Then he lives in a large house, etc., etc., etc. Why? Because see what is happening. Saturn is aspecting the 12th house, so either he will have a disturbed sleep, or he will be into some addiction or losing money because of the stock markets also. On the 4th house he aspects, so he might not be very happy at his home. It also aspects the 7th house. So only two people are, I call them captive audience. When a person has capacity, he does not get recognition, then what happens? And Saturn is sitting in the house of recognition, the 10th house, where recognition comes pretty late, because Saturn is known to be the Manda Graha, the slow one. So whatever is connected with Saturn is generally coming late in life. And so what would happen? Then such a person, if especially he is young, would be frustrated. What a frustrated person will be. He will take out his frustration on somebody. Whom? The mother and the spouse. These are the two captive audiences for him. And we know that malefics, especially Saturn aspecting a bhava, can tend to harm that bhava. He would be generally fond of short travels. Whenever he is outside, he might feel much better than when he is in his home or his motherland, or the place where he grew up most of the time of his life. So this is how one should also test. That is what I do. I am only trying to tell you to confirm whether my assessment is correct, because the lagna could be wrong. I mean, there are so many reasons. Those who have seen the process of birth can understand that noting the first breath is difficult, and sometimes for some reason ABCD, The Lagna could also be different. So always confirm this before just going and jumping into, giving him an advice which might play a problem with him. Again, Rahu and Ketu can also do that. Because Ketu in the fourth will mean he can leave his motherland also, or his mother might have lost his mother also. I mean, that is also a possibility. He might even leave the education at the graduation level. And in the 10th would be Rahu. Rahu is called Mlecha. Mlecha is Malayalam, you think Mlecha, etc. is different, but anybody who is of a distinctly different culture than ourselves is Mlecha. He is also called the thief. So he has both the, what can I say? He straddles two horses, let us say. So if Ketu is in the fourth house, then this Jataka might not be very happy staying in his motherland, or might be having some problem with mother, or might not have mother also. And 10th being in the Karma Sthana, the 10th house is the Karma Sthana. He would be more comfortable working with people of distinctly different culture. So this is one of the requirement. In the fourth, Rahu is also somebody who likes to investigate deep. So in the fourth house, if Rahu is there, that guy is happy, what we can say, communicating or being with foreigners is a possibility. Of course, his mother might be suspiciously different. Possible, we are not going there. We are only sticking here. Fifth house Rahu can give indication that he might be good at research. And for research also, people many times go abroad. 10th house, obviously, you know what happens. Manda Samarahu, Pujavata Ketu is said. 10th house Rahu anyway can show ability to work with foreigners, but it can also mean that this guy remains in his motherland, goes to some different state, but works in a multinational company. I am giving you the entire gamut of it, and then you have to use your Viveka to find out what can happen. 11th Bhava, earning from foreigners is possible, or his friends might be deceptive. So both the things are there, or he might earn from a not so clean ways. All these three things are possible, but one is also earning from foreigners. So that is possible. 12th house. Why 12th house? 12th house is said that 12th house Rahu indicates a person being set upon by thieves. But the reverse can also happen. If he goes out, he might earn from foreigners also. So remember that all these things are two-way, double-edged sword, sort of, if we may call it that. And so being double-edged sword, it is how we use it, isn't it? I mean, that is what I'm trying to explain. I might be good at it or not. You will decide. And this is the first thing, and then I have given some more shlokas to find out why I am saying about the third house, etc. Because it is always, otherwise it is very clear that if your valor is lost, then what you do? But because your valor is placed in distant land, so you better go there. If they say, nothing to do with religion, but there is a saying that if mountain cannot come to Muhammad, Muhammad better go to mountain. So if your fortune is abroad, then you go there. The fortune is not going to come to you, isn't it? You can see the Mahabharata and other scriptures, they are talking about it. We many a times try not to, or choose not to understand it. So now we will get the next slide, where, because always I always held that if I have got something and if I am on the right track, then some text or other will mention. Like here, Manasagari says, Dwadashaki Murti Pato. Murti Pato is the Lord of the Lagna. Ketuvat Karma, Aparo Ashubho Nicha, he is bad, etc. etc. Mani Sah Gotri Bhi. Videsh go Datta Mukta. He either goes abroad or he lives on others, arms and everything. That is what is being said. So Lagna Lord that I mentioned earlier, if he is in the 12th house, what happens? Any of all these things can happen. And so Videsha go is already legal, that he can go abroad. That is good. Next is the third house. Vyage Dushtikke, Mitra Virodha, Ati Bandhu Santapi, Dura Vasita Bandhu, Videsha Gami, Naro Bhavet Chatra. If the Lord of the third, Dushtikke is third bhava, what happens? That person is against his friends and angry with his, siblings and everything. And why Mitra? Because one of the description, I think even the great Parashara says that from third you can also see your friends. Because generally we look at friends from the 11th house, but friends can also be seen from the third house. And naturally, if they are expended, because that is house of expenditure, the 12th house, then he will not have good relations with him. Or either his brother will be living abroad, so two are at different places, but basically he will go abroad. That is what is being said about the third bhava. What happens to the fourth bhava, which I was talking about? Dvadashake Turya Pato. Mruta Pitrako va Videshago Vacha. Say that either he will lose his parents, Pitrako is all mother and father. If the Turya Pato, the Lord of the fourth, goes to the 12th house, or say that he will go abroad. So I'm just giving this, so you get an idea that it is not something coming out of my mind or not my system of looking at it. It is already been understood by many sages, and they have said this, but not in all texts you will find the shlokas. So that is why I'm saying. So we will go to the next step to find out what could be the position which we might want, so that you have already seen that. Now what is necessary? If this is there, I would say if damage is there to the 4th house, 7th house, and the 12th house simultaneously, then that person better goes abroad. Otherwise, he might be frustrated in his homeland and create problems for the mother, or be unhappy and have problems with the spouse. Is a possibility. This happens specifically, the harm occurs when malefics have some connection with those bhavas. So, and you are all astrologers, you know this shloka, so I need not write it. So now what remains? Okay, the potential is there. I look at a chart as a potential. This is possible. Something else needs to be done. One is the karma, but anything else, that is the dashas and the transits have also to simultaneously work in tandem with the natal chart's promise for something to happen. Of course, the Jataka will have to do this thing, but when will it happen is the question. When will I get the H1b visa? So this person has decided either to go there, either to be in India and get the visa from the employer, or he goes there, studies, and then tries for the H1b visa. Either of the two things are there, because we are talking about H1b visa. So let us see what dashas would be required. So the next slide, please, Neeraj. Yeah. So we are looking at what Mahadasha, Antardashas, Pratyanta dashas will be required. I am saying this specifically because we know, if we have, I mean, all of you have read the Parashari or Vinshotari Dasha. It is always said that the Mahadasha Lord by himself does not deliver anything. He creates an area, an environment when that can happen, but results are given by the lower level dashas. So that is why I have written Antardasha, Pratyanta Dasha, etc. It could as well be the Deha Dasha. So 6th Bhava Lord, 12th Bhava Lord, 10th Bhava Lord, Karaka for the 10th Bhava, Lagna Lord. And at the lowest level, functional benefits dasha at the lowest possible level, when the time is, we are thinking that whether in this month or this year he can get it. Find out that area, and whatever is the lowest level of dasha, that should be of a functional benefit, because that only indicates that some good thing will happen. Why the 6th Lord? If it is for job, then 6th Lord comes into picture. I mean, we need to remove this from our mind, that because it is a Dusthana, it is a Trika Bhava as well as a Trishadaya Bhava. But it is also Bhava of hard work and also jobs. So H1b is generally taken for jobs, and so 6th Lord becomes relevant. 12th Bhava, because the guy is going to, I mean, especially if he is in India and wants to get H1b from here, or in a different state in the US itself, working on working visa, I mean the student's visa, student's work permit, and then wants to get in an H1b visa from a company which is situated in some different state. So 12th bhava will come into picture. 10th bhava, because it connects to the career. Naturally, when we talk about bhava, we also look at the karaka bhava. Lagna Lord, because his body is going to go there. And Lagna Lord anyway gives mostly the auspicious results in his Antardasha. And functional world look at the lowest level. When H1B visa process is expected to be either completed or likely to get completed. All these things we should see. If they fall in place and at the lower level, the functional, benefits dasha is there, then now everything is almost ready. What is left is the final delivery boy, the transits, and so we shall see what should be the transits. Going to the next slide. Neeraj, next slide, please. So what should happen? Because ultimately some job has to be there, otherwise H1B is not available. So a benefics aspect or presence should be on the 10th. 10th bhava is also house of certification. Never forget that. It is called the Manasthana. Manasthana is, garments of raiments of honor and everything, or some certification, even when you appear for an exam, whether you will pass or not, all those things are looked at from the 10th bhava. So some benefit has to be there because his career is connected. Some malefic aspect of presence in the 12th or the 4th bhava. If the Jataka is applying, expecting H1B when he is residing outside US, of course, it could also be within a different state if he is going to change the state, as you know. Because what happens is, why should he go to distant land? There has to be some problem in the 12th house. As we see, many planets going to the 12th house can indicate something. So he is leaving his motherland and going abroad. So this should be there. Some benefit aspect on 11th, because mostly H1B is for job, and why you take H1B and a job in US is in expectation of better salary. This is 10th bhava is already there because your appreciation is also there and everything will happen. So some benefit aspect should be there. And if it is a new job, then benefit aspect on the 6th house will be required. Every time the 6th house is coming through, you will find, and maybe some of you might also think that why 6th house is concerned. It has to do with job. It is 6th house. Parashara says Mars as the Karaka for 6th house, but Jatak Parijatkar always also says that Saturn is also the Karaka for the 6th house, which I tend to agree with. And Saturn, as you know, is called Bhrutya, the servant. So when you serve, normally the 6th house comes into the picture. And there should be some benefit aspect because you get a job. H1B ultimately allows the employer to employ you. And so the benefit has to be. So now when all these things are there, I think this should be the last perhaps PPT slide, or there is one more. Or there is one more. It
No,
is
sir.
the last, isn't it? Yeah.
Yes, sir.
Yeah.
This was the last slide.
So we are now understanding what is happening here. And if all these things happen and the Jataka at least tries to get something around that time, he should get it. Since it is when will I get H1B, he has already done all those things. But all these houses we will have to find out. We have to find out three things: whether there is a potential that he goes abroad and is successful and happy, whether he will get a job abroad, and what is the reason. There can also be Dasha of the 5th Lord coming at that time. If this guy is going for, education abroad, but that doesn't necessarily need an H1B visa. If he is going for graduation, then the 4th Lord will be in the 12th house, but it also does not necessarily mean that he is going to apply for a H1B visa. That is, otherwise you might be perturbed because why 3rd and 4th and 5th house dashas are not being considered. It is for this reason. If it is just for going abroad or doing something, then third house of course can be always considered because it is a valor, the parakrama. His parakrama is lost in his country. It will be shown in distant land. Many you will find, especially in army, some people are more famous because they participated in a war in a foreign country and got the medals there, not in India. So it would be interesting to check whether this happened. And this is how we should look at H1B, is how I will to look at the entire gamut of the H1B question. For the simple reason, as I said, in the ancient time, there was no visa. Passport was there. The king had to give you something so that you enter the different kingdom and still be safe. And so, if there are any questions that you would like to ask, I would be very happy to give whatever, tell whatever I can understand. Everybody has, all of you are astrologers, you know the subject well. I am just pointing out what H1B is needed, because see, there is also L1 visa. There are so many different type of visas. You know about it, isn't it? But that is a very different ball game. If you are in England in a company which also has offices in UK, then L1 visa will come. So this is only specifically about the H1B visa, which has to be always understood. There can be business visas, but they will have a very different pattern of looking at things. Because if it is a business visa, then you will also look at the 7th house, which is generally considered to be the house of business. And you will just have to fine tune those, dasha, and I would say the transit would not be much different, but dashas would be certainly different. In transit, of course, whether business will happen or not, profit is a different issue. So 10th house again will come into picture. And this is how I think we should look at whether a person will gain an H1B visa or not.
Thank you, sir. Thank you very much. And I will request to all the participants, if there is any question, they can ask.
Thank you, Chandrasekhar ji. Thank you very much.
My pleasure. But let them ask the question. I am fine with that. No problem. Because actually, every astrologer must ask questions because he starts thinking. So I also used to do the same thing when I was young. So sometimes people feel a bit odd whether I should ask a question.
Right.
Remember that I am also a student like you. It might be more than 50 years or 60 years that I have studied. That is a different issue, but it does not make any difference. Because every time something new will happen, and then we will have to deal with it from the astrological point of view. So what I was trying to tell was how I would look at getting an H1B visa. What are the parameters which are required? Because there is nothing like H1B visa written anywhere, isn't it? It would not be. Or wars between countries. We will have to try to find out what dashas are required. Because I generally think that there are always X, Y, and Z axis. Trikona is very important in our great science, isn't it? So the natal chart has to have some promise. Then the right dashas should operate at that time, and transit also should be. Without transit, if we look at dashas, you see, then we generally stop at antardasha level, but that is a 3-year or 4-year period, which is a pretty long period for us to understand. And H1B visa, etc., are generally, within 6 months, within 2 years, something like that. So, anybody who has questions, don't.
I think Ankit ji want to ask anything. Ankit ji,
Yes,
want
sir.
to ask?
Yes, sir. Sir, just I want to know again.
Yeah.
Sahaj Bhav and Turiya Bhav.
Yeah. Sahaj is 3rd and Turiya is 4th.
दूरवासित बंधुर विदेशगामी नरो भवेत जाता.
Yeah. Dushchika is the 3rd bhava. Sahaj bhava. Sahaj and 3rd is same. Sahaj means one who is.
Sir, हम लोग ने अभी finish lecture कर दिया है. आपको if you are comfortable, you can come in.
Dushchika is third one, no problem. And Turiya avastha is the 4th avastha in yoga. So whenever Turiya is said, it is 4th. It means 4th.
So, sir, 4th house owner, 4th house ownership, if sit in 12th.
Yeah.
So it can be possible, sir.
Yeah, it is possible. And generally that person would not be very comfortable at home. So one thing you will notice is you can ask him whether when you go for some travel or whatever, or even in a different place, as a student, people go, do you feel more comfortable there or at home? That is what I do to confirm
Yes,
whether what I am thinking is correct or not.
Yes.
Because
And
it
sir,
is
can
also
we-
possible. Yeah.
Yes.
Yeah.
So can we understand like that H1B visa is like a permanent foreign settlement? So like
Yeah.
in Canadian country, they
Yeah.
have a PR system.
Yeah, PR and then followed by the, that is what I was saying. You can apply it there also. Wherever there is a system where you need a work permit, isn't it? I mean, we start with work permit, whether that is possible, and then go on the degrees according to, I think in UK it will be that class 1 and visa and whatever. So this is applicable everywhere. This is also
For the-
applicable whether a person, sometimes you will get somebody who would want to know whether, I mean, generally parents come to me that my son wants to study abroad, and when should he go? And then I would look at the, if it is 4,000, I can say that he might go when the graduation level is there. If it is in 5th house, I would say post graduation level you send them there. That will be better, because what is 5th house is acquired knowledge, and where that knowledge is lost, where in his motherland, isn't it? But if he goes to a distant land, the 12th house. 12th house is, as you know, wherever you feel you have no control, is 12th house. It is sleep, it is hospitals, it is, and a distinctly different culture where you feel awkward. So I would say then send him at the PG level, it would be better for him. So I mean, we can use it in I'm just giving you an idea of how I would look at it, because the question was H1B, I restricted it to H1B. But everywhere the same procedure is there, more or less. I mean, in Canada also you can go for study, then get maybe for 2-year diploma, post diploma course, you get a 2-year work permit sort of thing, and then go on to the PR, and maybe in future, because that is a route people many a times take to enter USA, if I am right. So yeah, this applies everywhere. I mean, this applies everywhere. There is no problem, no doubt about it. It would apply.
Thank you, sir.
That is why I was explaining it in depth. That what happens. See, we know this person is great. He is knowledgeable. Nobody is recognizing him. Where will he be recognized? Look at the 5th lord, where he is going. See, that is where, see, that 5th house lord is indicating in which area he might get appreciated, because that is acquired knowledge. His acquired knowledge might be appreciated at a different place, isn't it? Or like we are talking on virtual, in the virtual world, this would also come perhaps in the foreign country, because we never know when the internet will break down and we may not be able to talk, isn't it? So, and somebody else controls the Zoom. So even that is a different culture as far as we are concerned. I mean, that is how I look at it. Let me make it very clear, because these things were non-existent, at least thought to be non-existent at that time. Isn't it? That is why moksha is seen from the 12th house. Whatever you cannot, where it is not in your hands, sort of, you feel that I am a stranger here, is all to be seen from the 12th. At least that is how I look at it. So maybe in some text or other, it should be always written. There are 4, they say, Laksham Vyakaranam Proktam Chatur Laksham Tu Jyotisham. That there are 100,000 books, I think it is shloka of Vyakarana, and 400,000 of Jyotish texts. And that was in the ancient times. So now, I mean, like people like me and everybody else writing books, the number would have grown like anything. So that is it. So anybody else has a question? I have a tendency at my age to explain in depth. So you will have to pardon me for that.
Thank you, sir.
Any question?
Thank you, sir.
Hello.
Yes. Anyone want to ask any question? Thank you, sir. No questions are there.
I hope I have been able to do justice to the task that was given to me.